Yep, accidentally. It's the first ever Land's End to Join the Greats run completed off-road. 89% is roughly off-road. There's a few roads, miles linking the trails. That's the route, basically. The Southwest Coast Path, which you guys are familiar with. Exmoor, Quantox, and then just a whole succession of national trails all across the country. And that seems faster at home. And it was very much a journey of two halves, but not geographically. I've put the mountains in big there. That last bit was 8 days from Fort William to the end, 234 miles straight through the mountains. The rest is trails. That's pretty much pathless, and it was horrific. And I'll show you very visually towards the end of the talk something which illustrates that. But if you could keep that in mind, how small that little bit there looks compared to the rest of the country. So it's 1,000 miles up to Fort William, and then 234 to there. The run was 1,254 altogether, including diversions to shops for food, getting lost, and that's just the actual miles I ran. And it was 6 weeks, 3 days, and 17 hours, including 3 rest days, 2 of which were planned, and one, well, it wasn't a rest day. I did 6 miles and then couldn't move, so that was classed as a rest day. That's my shortest day. So that's an average of 30 miles a day for 6 weeks. I won't keep you long today. I thought I'd just get to the best bits, which is basically what messed up, like sort of cock-ups along the way. And before I even started, there was a major cock-up. I said I'd ran this accidentally, the longest unsupported run in the UK. So obviously the running part was kind of on purpose. I didn't sort of trip my way over to the end of the country. I planned the running part. It's the unsupported part was never planned. And you'd never, in your right mind, plan to do this unsupported. The plan had been to run it in 23 days with a support crew. I secretly wanted to do it in 21. I planned to do 58 miles a day with a support crew, and I thought that's very feasible. Crazy, but feasible. And 2 weeks before the run, I did my first ever marathon, which was the Endurancelife Exmoor Marathon. And yeah, I did. I say my first marathon. It's a bit misleading. I sometimes ran 3 20-plus miles a week in training, but this was the first and to date the only race I've ever entered. No, it wasn't that bad. So I did enjoy it, but it just fell on the exact 2-week taper date to my off for the run, and it was on my favourite training run. My favourite training run. I'm from Woolacombe. It's from Mort Point to Limmer from back on the coast trail. And it's brutal training, but if you can run there for 7 hours, you know you can do anything. That's where Ranulph Fiennes trained for 3 hours a day before he went to the North Pole. And if 3 hours a day of that gets you enough to do the North Pole solo, you can pretty much do anything if you can do double that. And it's just stunning as well. And I did pretty good in the marathon. I came third. Which I was pretty pleased with, and primarily I was pleased with the time. I trained in the same gym as Vicky Skelton, who runs for Team GB, the ultramarathon team, and she'd run the race the year before in a time of 5:08, and I wanted to do 4:58. I wanted to go 10 minutes faster. It sounds ambitious, but the amount of training I'd done for the previous 2 years, for the previous year I trained a lot harder than Paula Radcliffe. I'd really done a lot of miles. But I'd never tested myself, and I thought, right, it's going to be really embarrassing if you don't at least match Vicky's time, because there's only one person who ever ran further than this in the UK. When I was about 6 years old. His name's Hugh Simmons, and he completed a 2,000-mile run around every mountain in the UK. He ran between them as well, and to the top, which is something I aim to get to that level one day. But he'd ran 100 miles a week for 10 years straight and was 3 times foul running champion of the UK. And I just entered my first marathon, so I was a little bit nervous about, about doing this. So I felt I really had to perform that day, and I completed an hour in a time of 4 hours 8, so just an hour faster than the Team GB runner. And I was ecstatic on that until I found out the course had been shortened by 3 miles that year. Because the year before it was 29 miles, they got it to 27. But I did the maths, and it still was 20 minutes faster at the marathon. No, 30 minutes faster at the marathon point. So I was actually pretty ecstatic that so it had been proven. I knew on paper I was doing what I had to do. I felt strong, but I actually had some objective proof that I was running faster, stronger than Team GB runners. Phoned up my support crew. We hadn't spoke for a few weeks. These were two media students who'd contacted me and asked if they could come and do an interview. And I said, if you guys have got a few weeks free, you can come in a motorhome, as long as there's two of you, share the driving, share the filming. I'll cover all your food and petrol costs, so you guys get a 3-week road trip and document something that's never been done before. They jumped at the chance, and it was all organised months before. Never actually met them, though, but just a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails. 2 weeks before, phoned them up just to say how well the train was doing, and that they should be pretty excited that there's a good chance I'm going to make it. And this was like, yeah, on the phone. Oh, about the dates. And they both had resit exams to do, bang in the middle of my run. And 2 weeks before, I found out they had no support crew. And that was pretty much over, as far as I was concerned. There's no way it could be done with bed and breakfast or hostels. They're too sporadically placed. You can't, doing 20 miles one day and 60 the next. It's not the same as doing 2 40-mile days back to back. You're going to be a very different state of fatigue. Plus, they're not on the path. There'd be a lot of detours every day, which meant extra walking miles or a stupid amount in taxis. And I just plain couldn't afford to spend 3 weeks in bed and breakfasts across the country. And without the support crew, a lot of things went out the window. There's no way I could carry maps, which is quite handy on an off-road run this scale. I obviously had the route on GPS, but trusting a little box like that it won't get wet and just break, and I couldn't afford to. Garmin sponsored me, gave me the best handheld one you can get, and I got the mapping as well, which only works in the national parks. As soon as you leave the park, you're left with like a equivalent of a road atlas 200,000 scale, so there's a road over there, and over there's the sea, and you're somewhere in between. So that's good. And yeah, so there's no maps, I had no control over food, energy drinks, electrolytes, recovery shakes, no way to carry spare kit, spare shoes, dry socks, a decent sized first aid and foot repair kit, as well as the glaring obvious problem of having nowhere to sleep. And the only option I was left with was to attempt to run mountain marathon style, which is where you run self-sufficient with everything. Well, in the races, you even carry your food apart from water. They're usually 20 miles one day, 20 miles the next in the elite level. It's obviously the original mountain marathon, and Endurancelife have done the last few years, done on Dartmoor actually. And they're tough events because the fatigue you build on day one carries through. The running with a pack really does knack you. I knew better than most how weighted running affects you. Your training. I previously trained under Dr. Pedler, who is the chief physiologist at the English Institute of Sport, and he, not through merit, just through the fact that I had a crap job at a hotel and his cousin happened to work there, I mentioned I was going to do this run across the desert I wanted to do, which hasn't happened yet. I had a hernia, which missed the opportunity to do the desert window, so I thought I'd do something in the UK, had a look at this, and amazingly it had never been done. Well, Google said, so I thought, well, it might have been done before the internet, so I contacted the Trail Running Association, the Trail Running Association, and they had no record of anyone even attempting it, let alone a record, so I thought I've got to go and have a go at this. Under Pedler, I trained, built my miles up to where I was running. I do 10-day cycles. I do 9 days on, 1 day off, and I'd run twice a day, an average of about 3 hours a day, and that's 120 on average miles a week for 9 days. Have a day off, go again for 9 days. That's a 3-week block, roughly 20 days, and I'd have an easy week where I half the miles, and I walked most of them, and then go again. And I changed from running that way to running. I got to. You couldn't really push it much further than that. Those miles were all on sand dunes, coast path, and moorland. That's the equivalent of about 170, 180 miles a week of flat road running in terms of energy used to lift you up the hills or get your feet out of the sand, so bouncing back off the floor. And I wanted to get stronger, but there's no way you can push that avenue, just more miles, more miles. So I contacted William Sitchell, who's pretty much the UK's best ultramarathon runner. He's got, I think, got most world records for a GB runner, Scottish guy. And I think there's only one race he's never won that he's entered. I knew about his training method. If any of you are familiar with him, he did the same route as me. He went down the long mile route, got as far as you could go, and thought there's got to be a better way. And you basically run with weight vests and do incredibly intense strength training in the gym. To give you an idea how much these weight vests affect your running, the first time I ever felt a strain, muscular strain in running, was during a 55-mile run, training run I was doing. And at mile 40, my hip flexors felt like they were on fire, and that's the first time I felt my muscles fail through effort. Like not energy-wise, but just actual localized muscles didn't want to move. I had to force my way through that. When I started training with heavy weights, 12 miles into a 15-mile run, and I had the same pain. That's all it took to elicit the same training response from my muscles and make those muscles stronger, was running with 8% body weight on my back. And you can't do that from scratch. You have to build the training, the weight up very slowly. But in essence, running with weights is sort of 400% more effective in training than high miles. And training and events are the same as far as your body's concerned. Running with weight was going to be brutal. I just didn't think it could be done. But sort of quitting just like that didn't sit easy. I had the perfect excuse, like get out without sort of getting egg on my face, of just blaming the support crew and go, oh, Nobs let me down, and blame it all on them. But that wasn't the truth of the matter. I'd been losing sleep for weeks before this event. I really did think I was punching above my weight. I hadn't even done one mountain marathon, let alone one a race. Did a fun run in a carnival when I was like 16. I thought, I just decided to get into running, and quite all or nothing character that's went for it. And so I had to ask myself, is it possible to try? And I thought, well, I can try it. It might be embarrassing when I fail on day 3 or 4, but I still fall back on the same excuse. I was like, oh, I can't be done with the backpack. So this is me on the way off. As soon as I found out there's no support crew, I started chomping on the donuts and the burgers in between meals. I managed to put on a stone in 2 weeks, which was quite good going. I sat on the sofa, reclined, eating and drinking crap in between meals, thinking, yep, I'm a world-class athlete. You get stronger in recovery, not in training. And I was trying to buy that crap, but I felt disgusting, to be honest. And I set off, and I'd planned to do, I said I'd do it in 21 days, not 23, and get there 2 days early. Day 1, this is 10 minutes to midnight, I set off at midnight, and I did do the 58 miles. This is everything I carried. The shoes there aren't the shoes I was wearing. I alternated between 2 pairs, so I actually carried the shoes in my bag. And they were a kilo themselves. Once they're wet and muddy, they're pretty horrible. By day 4, my feet were paper mache. It was incredible heat waves. It was June, I set off. No, sorry, May. And it was huge heat waves. To the extent where on day 4, I drank 11 litres of fluid, and I was still hallucinating so bad. I tried, after I gave myself a headache, trying to read this tree. I realised it was a tree and not a footpath sign. Yeah, that's thanks to these guys here. 2 weeks before I did that marathon, I killed both my big toenails. So I wasn't starting in the best condition. I started with 2 black nails, which I lanced, but 2 days too late and they were dead. So they started coming off. But yeah, on day 4, I tried reading a footpath sign, gave myself a headache because I couldn't focus, and I suddenly realised it was a tree. It wasn't the wooden footpath sign, it was bark, and that's why I couldn't make out the letters. That was with 11 litres of fluid, and I knew it. Basically, I couldn't run in the heat, so I was running at night and trying to sleep in the day, but I couldn't sleep in the day. I was just like sitting in shade in parks or in shade of hedges and fields, and I did, I think, about 6 hours sleep and 5 marathons, and I just ended up crying, and that's nice. But yeah, it was only when I realised it's not possible to run 2 marathons a day carrying a pack without access to fluid and electrolytes or food that I had to move the date, and then the crazy sort of stress levels went, and I was like, right, now it's just getting to the end, it's not getting there in a certain time. And diet-wise, what you find near footpaths are small villages, so you might get a pub, if you're lucky a garage, or a post office, and what they all love to sell are crisps, sodas, like cola, and chocolate. And I hadn't actually eaten chocolate for 4 years before this event. I didn't believe this thing called neuro-linguistic programming. I wanted to test if it worked, and I couldn't eat cheese. I mean, I always hated cheese. They made me think chocolate tastes like cheese, and I couldn't eat it for 4 years, and I had to force myself to eat chocolate, and now I love it again. After 1,000 miles of chocolate, it's enough to get over it. As you guys are very familiar, the coast path, that's the reason I did the run south to north, because I couldn't imagine running 1,000 miles, spending a night in my own bed, I'm from North Devon, and then having 250 miles of this. So I had to get the coast path out of the way first. People who talk about the Pennine Way, the West Highland Way, they think it's the toughest path. It's not. That is the path there. It looks pretty steep, that 50-degree thing, but then you go up, and that's very steep. And that's the reason my feet were paper mache from the downhill running, and my face was grimacing there. So my first day, so that's what I ate pretty much, was chocolate, crisps, and cola, and my stomach felt like it was rotting. It was horrible, and if I was lucky enough to finish near a pub in the evening, I'd have whatever was cheapest, the most calories per pound on the menu, which is usually lasagna with garlic bread, and I wasn't kissing anyone, so that was okay. And that was my fastest kilometre of the whole run. Those guys were, I'd never heard a rutting noise, whatever they call it. I was like, that's a strange noise. Came around the path. They should have been in that field to the right of the fence. This is the footpath they're on. I came around the corner there. He felt the Barry White CD scratch, and the mood lighting changed, everything changed, and he wasn't too pleased. He pretty much had the deal sewn up, I think. And I had to jump in the fence. I'm actually leaning over the fence there to get a photo, and he is pursuing me. There's a fence here marking the end of the field, and I had to run, it was about just under a kilometre to get to the next gate, like style thing, and I don't know how I did it, but that's the most adrenaline I had in the whole run. My first day in Scotland, I ate a Cornish pasty and some Kendal mint cake for breakfast, which I thought was quite ironic. But I ran down an old Roman drove road, and it had hedges. It was a really hot day. There was really tall hedges down the length of the road, and I thought, at least when I get in there, it'll be some shade. But by the time I got there, the sun had got up, and it was just like a little oven. I was running through this, it was just blocking any breeze, and I was sweating, so I had to actually slow to a bit of a walk, run. And after a while, I noticed it must have got cooler, because I wasn't sweating anymore, I was completely dry. And I really sped up and started banging the miles out and started to get pretty dizzy before I finally realised I'd stopped sweating because I'd run out of fluids. And actually, there was nothing left to sweat, and I was just cooking myself slowly. And I ended up drinking water from a ford, came out with a road, went near the footpath went over a road near a farm. Disgusting water, but I just drank that, put some chlorine tablets in it. I said to wait 20 minutes, so I waited about 40 seconds and probably poisoned myself with neat bleach, but I had to get it in. So the real problem was sort of lack of food. In England, I lost a stone of fat in 5 weeks, mostly fat in 5 weeks. But in Scotland, I lost 1 stone in 8 days, and that was nearly all muscle. And I tell people that, and it sort of mostly goes over their head. If you imagine a £1/4 burger, I was losing 7 of them a day in muscle. And you don't have to imagine. I'll just come out here and show you, which is... So that's... there you go. That is... well, you've all got a free burger in a minute, 'cause these are still frozen. So I've got some new friends at the fire. Let's see. But I can't really get out of this thing. This is only 10.5 pounds of fat. I actually lost a stone and 12 pounds of meat, of burgers. So that is what I lost in the first 5 weeks. Just pure fat. Sorry, I lost my mic. Can you get the mic?
Yeah, you're okay, sit down, mate.
Sorry about that. I'm not Lady Gaga. I just hold it. So that's what I lost there. That's 5 weeks of running. That's only 10.5 pounds. So those of you who think you want to lose a stone, there's a lot to lose. But this is what I lost in the final 8 days when I had no access to... That's a stone of muscle. This is what I lost. I was visibly like a shirt size smaller each day as I ran, and having to adjust my bag straps as I went every day. Yeah, you guys can have yourself to burgers if you want. I'll bill you for the t-shirt. Yeah, that's sort of what running looks like. That's what I slept in. 700 grams for the whole sleeping system, which is less than 1 water bottle. And the Jaffa cakes and paracetamol do work. That's what I needed to keep moving. But that was my bedtime treat, basically. 2 paracetamol and 6 Jaffa cakes. And laugh it up. There's that face again. Day 4, week 4, pretty similar, a little bit more stubble. That's Hadrian's Wall. Not that impressive, really. Just a few bricks and some grass. But no, I actually slept on the wall, which was pretty amazing. Woke up the next morning to that, which is what I've been running towards for almost a month. That's a Cheviot's, which I thought was a Highlands. That's just hills. I was like, and I did shout some crazy Highlander-esque stuff about how this wall keeps Scottish people out. They can't stop the English coming in. Jumped out. Probably shouldn't have said that out loud, but you had to entertain yourself when you go. That's what they look like a bit when you're a bit closer. And if any of you want to go for a trail holiday and wondering where to go in the country, I would recommend the West Highland Way. It's absolutely stunning. It doesn't actually go up there, it goes down there. I'd like to say it went up there, but I'm not Frodo. I just went down there. That's the first time I've been happy to see a flying rat. Seagulls, or whatever you want to call them. It was pecking away at that little pigeon's intestines, but it's the first one I'd seen in 1,000 miles, and it actually almost brought me to tears. I thought, right, I'm actually near the coast again, and I hadn't crossed my mind. I know, like just with the heart of the country. That's the last of the mountains behind me. I said there was a problem with food, but the main problem in the last 8 days was where I lost all that muscle. I left Fort William with what I could carry, and between Fort William and the end, I went past 3 buildings and crossed 5 roads. It was truly remote. In England, I was lucky enough to get cafes or pubs and get something to eat. I left Fort William. I think I'd do the next bit in 6 days, doing 40 miles a day. On day 3, I banged my head on the rock and had a terrible day. I only did 23 miles, and that dropped it to 8 days. Well, I dropped it a day anyway. And my food was dwindling pretty fast. I thought I had enough rations to do 3,000 calories a day, which would mean losing a pound a day, but I thought that was manageable for 6 days. Once my rations looked like they were half after 3 days, I thought that was a bit of a problem, so I counted it out on this day where I'd banged my head, and I had enough left for 1,200 calories a day. And I think I'd counted kilojoules to the calories or something stupid when I'd been running, when I'd been in left Fort William. But the biggest problem I had is I didn't have any salt. Obviously no protein as well. I just left with a rucksack full of chocolate bars, coffee, milk powder, and loads of sugar. And it's the first time I carried a stove. In England I didn't carry a stove, but in the Highlands I dumped 1 the pair of shoes with the most holes in, I threw in the bin because I knew it would be actual moorland. I wouldn't need any suspension from the shoe. So that extra weight I could replace with a hot drink at least, which is brilliant for morale. It's pushing an extra few miles when you know you've got a hot drink at the end of it. When you're sleeping in just a foil bag, it was not, it was just out in the open. I had myself a nice little cheeseburger from the Sabre menu on the way out of Fort William, and I grabbed as many salt rash sachets as I could get without thinking I was being cheeky. And they lasted 2 days, which meant by the final night I'd done 6 days and over 200 miles without any electrolytes. And I woke up the day before I finished, looked at my food, and there was no way I could go more than one more day. I had to finish the next day because there wasn't enough rations just to lie in bed and do nothing without losing weight. And so I had 94 miles to go, and I ended up completing that in 34 hours with 4 hours unplanned sleep. This was around 9 o'clock at night on the night before I finished. The last night was behind me. I was feeling okay. 3 hours later, I started, at this time of year in Scotland, you can read at 11:30 at night. It's so bright in June, July in Scotland. I saw lightning, but I didn't hear any thunder. And then a few seconds later, it happened again. And I was trying to count how far away it was, to know, seconds to see how far away it was, and it just wasn't coming. And I was like, it's impossible. And I thought I was hallucinating, the sky flashing, and I finally twigged it was my vision flashing off. And it wasn't, basically I had such low salt levels, my vision wasn't getting from my eyes to my brain. And for the next half an hour, I had to memorise each step I was taking so I wouldn't twist out my ankle and fall over. Half an hour after that, my vision sorted itself out. I felt wet, this is like midnight now, sweat patch on my chin, and I was like, why am I sweating there? I went like that, and my hand was caked in blood, and I was actually losing blood from my nose. And this is the last place you'd find walkers. It's all the mountains over there. Up here, no one really goes. It's boring. And I was like, well, if I stop and wait for help, it's not coming. If I keep going, I might cause more damage, but I haven't really got much choice. So I kept going. And I was more worried about not making it than I was about sort of dying, really. I thought there was a chance I might be dying at that point. But I did make it the next day. The actual sign is privately owned, so there was no sign there when I set off, when I got there. So I went back the next day. Oh, that's a nice one. Went back the next day. It says 13th of July, but it's the 12th of July I finished. And that's the photos, me before and after, without the divot illustration there. And yeah, that's it. Yeah. I don't think I've got time for any questions.
I'm afraid again, questions. Grab Kevin in the next interval. We've got another 2 talks back to back now, but I would just like to say that Kevin's doing a masterclass in strength training for endurance running tomorrow morning. So if you want to take on board any tips,
I can't make you lose that much weight in one day. That's what you
want. You can't do miracles. But the time's on the timetable, so catch up with him then. Thanks very much, Kevin.
Cheers. Thank you.